A few months ago, my father, who was over 70, passed away. Even though the contact between us was no longer as intense due to distance, starting a family, work, and other factors, I was still emotionally close to him. Now, after his death, more and more things are coming out that I don't want to know. Initially, I heard anecdotes from my mother about how bad my mother-in-law was. I already knew that. The woman was probably horrible. Then, it came out that my father also acted like a jerk from time to time. Okay, he was very young, but then there were accusations that he probably cheated on her. My mother only had circumstantial evidence, but from what she told me, it was pretty strong circumstantial evidence. Reddit would scream, "Run! He's cheating on you." Now he is dead, and I can't ask him anymore. My father, who always seemed so perfect to me, is now disenchanted in my eyes. It was too much for me. I tried to avoid talking to my mother and was incredibly happy to be able to leave. My thoughts were and are spiraling. I keep telling myself, he was in his early 20s and at a time when people weren't as free as they are today. This man was always morally impeccable and even conservative when it came to clothing. At the same time, he always supported me, and my education was his priority. He empathized with women who would become intimacy workers. He supported education for women. But if my mother was right, her uncle once brought a few intimacy workers into their apartment during wartime while she was home with the children, while the city was being bombed. He really sacrificed a lot for us. So I try to think about all of this as little as possible. Now comes the bigger issue. When I announced his death, a woman wrote very warmly about him. Nice, I thought. One of his intellectual friends, he posted philosophical and socially relevant articles, and there were many such messages. But it was very warm, and that's why I remember it. My mother has now found some text messages, nothing intimacy. But from the way she described it, it sounds like an emotional affair or just too much kindness and attention. My father was incredibly jealous. My mother never gave him any reason for that. This woman asked my father to send my mother to me. I had had a baby, and it was planned for her to visit and help me anyway, so that they could talk calmly without him getting upset. Mind you, the two didn't even live in the same country, and this woman is married too. We're talking about people over 60 or 70 who are already grandparents and retired. This man, who in the end could hardly hear or breathe, was the charming intellectual on the internet. Meanwhile, he paid little attention to my mother while she constantly did everything, really everything, for him. She was his wife, nurse, and everything. She called me crying and angry. He didn't even wish her a happy birthday unless she reminded him. He wrote lovely messages to these women, and I mean multiple women, and put a lot of thought into it. He even saved the messages and numbered them. I have no idea whether he was just charming and did a copy-paste or whether there was more to it. I just don't know. He had his thousands of followers. I will try to reassure her and explain that it could just be an image thing. She is still hurt. He congratulates everyone on Grandparents' Day and Mother's Day, but not her. I do not know the contents of the messages, and she could only read some of them. I asked her to see a therapist. Only then would I help her restore the messages, if that's even possible. She wants to know. Understandable. She is trying to contact a therapist tomorrow. Now what I actually want. I don't know how to deal with all this. I don't want to know any of this. At the same time, I feel so incredibly sorry for my mother. And now my whole worldview is shaking, and I'm thinking about my own marriage. What if my husband is like that? You supposedly choose your partner based on your father's example. What if loyalty doesn't exist? What if all men are like that? I wonder how people who have unfaithful parents from a young age deal with it. Because as a 40-year-old woman and mother, I feel like I'm breaking down. I have absolutely no idea how to deal with this. And at the same time, I have to stand tall and take care of the family. I don't even dare to tell my husband what I've learned. What if this makes him think it's normal and okay to cheat? I know how irrational that thought is, but it's still there. I feel incredibly lost. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Luckily, my husband isn't completely like my father. He is intelligent and not really social, but he treats me better than my father treated my mother. There are a few similarities. The sad thing is that I think you are right. My mother said something similar. He didn't want her to get more education, but at the same time, he wanted me to get my PhD. I always thought it was because education is important to him. Now I think it's because he didn't want me to end up with a man like him. Everything seems so unreal. I always saw him as a modern and intelligent man. And now I am told that my view on relationships is naive and romanticizing. I got so mad at a Reddit user for that comment that I deleted the post in the German subreddit. Is it naive to expect your father not to be a cheater and to love your mother? Comment 2. My condolences. It sounds like you lost your father twice, first physically and then also the image of him you had. This must be incredibly hard and make you wonder just how much of everything in life is real and how much is just a facade, especially in your own marriage. But is your husband like your father? Someone who won't give you any attention, not even on your birthday? Someone who takes you for granted while charming other women all over the place? Does he not value you? Honestly, your father seemed to have some narcissistic tendencies. His overly charming online persona, his almost disdain for the woman he married, and who he treated more like a maid than a wife, his cheating, his support of his daughter's education, all point in that direction. Now for the update. Redditors, I posted a while back about my dad passing away, and my mom revealing some pretty shocking stuff about him. It's been a few months since then, and things have taken an even crazier turn. A week after my mom told me about the whole emotional affair thing with this other woman, she invited the whole family over for dinner. She wanted to keep things normal, I guess. The atmosphere was super awkward. My brother, sister, and I were all trying not to say anything that would make it more uncomfortable. My mom had cooked this huge meal, like she was trying to recreate every Sunday dinner she'd ever made, and we were all just sitting there, picking at our food. My younger sister, Kate, tried to lighten things up a bit by bringing up a funny memory about my dad. She was laughing and telling the story, but I could see my mom's face just kind of blank. I don't think any of us have ever felt so out of place. Then my mom mentioned that she had been going through some old photos of my dad, trying to find any that could explain what he was doing. She said she found a bunch of old ones of us as kids, and we all started reminiscing about the time we got lost hiking and Dad had to come find us. It was a nice little escape until my mom found a photo of my dad with some woman none of us recognized. She was smiling in the picture, and my mom said she had no idea who she was. Right when my mom said that, I thought the woman looked familiar, but I just couldn't place her. My brother, Jake, said he thought he recognized her from some charity event. This is when I learned that my dad had done charity work, something I'd never even heard about. I was kind of shocked. My dad had never mentioned anything like that, and it felt like there was this whole part of his life that we had no clue about. After dinner, I couldn't get the woman out of my mind. I decided to look her up on my phone and see if I could find anything. I came across a photo of her with my dad from the same charity event, and they were really cozy with each other. The date on the event matched up with the timeline of the messages he had sent to the other woman. I called my mom over to show her the photo, and her face went pale. She just kept staring at the screen in disbelief. She finally whispered, "I recognize her. She's been in his life for years." My mom said she had seen them together at other events, but she chose to ignore it, thinking it was harmless. We all decided to go through more photos, hoping for something that would give us a clue about what my dad was up to. That's when we found another picture of him with a bunch of women at a party. I noticed one woman in particular, and she was really close to my dad, like a little too close. The room felt like it was heating up, and the tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. I felt like I had to confront my brother about what we found. I caught up with Jake in the kitchen while everyone else was distracted. I showed him the photos, and his face just went blank. He said we had to dig deeper into our dad's past. That's when we decided to search social media for any links, especially regarding the charity events. I found a post from a few years back where my dad was tagged with the other woman, captioned, "My favorite partner in crime." That's when we discovered that she was a co-organizer for a lot of the events my dad had gone to. We even managed to find her contact info through social media. We debated whether to send her a message, but I decided that I wanted to go to the next charity event instead. It was set for the following weekend. We planned to gather all the evidence we could and confront this woman about her connection to my dad. The event was held at this gorgeous venue right by the water. When I arrived, the first thing I noticed was the woman standing there. I could see how comfortable she was with everyone around her. You could just tell she was one of those people who lights up a room. I tried to stay calm and collected as I approached her. I introduced myself and tried to keep my composure, but I think she could tell something was off. She was super friendly and gave me a hug. I felt like I was in a bad movie or something. I asked her about her relationship with my dad, and her demeanor changed. She looked genuinely taken aback. She said he was just a good friend. I pressed her further, revealing that we knew about the messages and the photos. Her expression shifted to defensive. I decided to snap a photo of her. Looking back, I knew it was a little extreme, but I felt like I needed to do something to document this meeting. I wanted proof that we confronted her. As I took the picture, it felt like the end of a chapter in this whole messed up story. Edit: I didn't expect this post to get so much attention. To clarify, the woman in the photo was a friend, and her relationship with my dad was platonic. My dad was involved in charity work to support families in need. My mom was aware of this, but was upset that he never included her. Am I the idiot for feeling trapped in my marriage to a woman who berates me for decades-old mistakes and now wants a divorce? My wife, 63 years old female, and I, 61 years old male, have been married for 38 years, and I feel like I'm stuck with no way out. For a long time, I believed that I was the problem, something my wife has drilled into me for decades, but I increasingly believe that it's not all me, or even mostly me. I left my corporate job a year ago, and now that I've had time to reflect, I am looking at an increasingly bleak future for our relationship. I need to decide whether to stay or go, and both options seem awful for different reasons. Some background. I grew up as an only child in a dysfunctional household in a small town. My father drank heavily every night from my earliest memories and was a mean drunk. I distinctly remember standing up to him when he would threaten my mother, even before I entered puberty. My mother had her own issues. Let's just say that not too many kids received the treatment I did for the mortal sin of getting a B in school. I once had to go to the doctor from a whipping she delivered when I was maybe 8 years old. That one was back talk, not grades. I was always a smart kid, and since my mother drilled academics into me from a young age, I ended up skipping first grade and was the smallest boy in my class. We were poor, and my mom made all of my clothes at home. I lacked confidence, and as you can imagine, I wasn't what girls were looking for. I had exactly 0 dates in high school and 1 date in college, which didn't go well. I went to an engineering school that used a co-op educational model with 50% school and 50% work. I've always been strong at work. I met my wife at work near the end of my studies, and the fact that she was open to me astonished me. I fell for her, how lucky I thought I was, and within 2 years, we married, then had the first of 2 children 2 years after that. My career took off well enough. I lucked into an expatriate assignment in Europe for 3 years and increasingly worked globally with lots of travel. That was hard on my wife, and I realize now that I didn't have enough empathy for her. I did other dumb stuff, nothing awful, but still. I worked really hard to improve as a person, and over time learned to be more confident and well-rounded. Throughout this, my wife was always pushing me to rise higher at work, and never failed to point out how successful certain friends' husbands were in comparison to me. Yes, she cherry-picked her examples. Throughout our marriage, my wife has switched between Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. When she's Jekyll, she's okay-ish. When she's Hyde, she frequently berates me and brings up mistakes I made earlier in our marriage. It's not unusual for her to go on a run complaining about multiple things I did decades ago. Over the years, she's brought up these criticisms at least 1,000 times. I am not exaggerating. It might be 2,000 or more. She will do this especially when I say anything even slightly critical of her, but sometimes it's just because she's mad about something else in her life. This often involves her mother or brother, both of whom she has very problematic relationships with. To be fair, her mother is a real piece of work, a genuine narcissist, and her brother has issues too. Her father, whom she adored, I liked him too, passed away a few years ago. Today, she went on a barrage complaining about my grocery shopping. I now do at least half the shopping and most of the cooking. My sins: I bought too much pasta sauce, 3 jars. The horror, and not the brand she prefers. I bought good stuff, made locally, plus I bought red wine vinegar and apple cider vinegar when we already had a bottle of each in the pantry. She probably ranted for 10 minutes on that alone. She has a very limited range of topics she wants to talk about, most of which consist of complaints and other downers. She likes to have very serious conversations only, nothing lighthearted ever. When I go out with other people and she's not there, we have great conversations and fun. If she's there, she'll berate me later about all the things I did wrong in front of others. I can't remember the last time I had fun with her. She does act more fun-loving in front of others. Intimacy? It's been more than 2 years. I get that she is postmenopausal, but even when she was younger, intimacy was something to do with the lights off and pretty infrequently. In our first 5 years of marriage, once a week was a really good month. The last time I tried, she starfished me and told me she didn't want me to go down on her and to just put it in. I find it appalling to have intimacy without giving pleasure to a partner, so I just rolled over. She constantly complains and worries about money. I started a consulting business after leaving corporate life, and yes, it's slow. I'm making less than we spend right now, though I am close to landing some larger projects. But our net worth is around $3 million in investments and nearly $1 million in real estate, owned free and clear. We're not starving, but to hear her, we're just a bad month away from the poorhouse. I've basically emotionally separated from her already, which has been great because I no longer care when she criticizes me. I just gray rock and get on with my life. I try to focus on healthy habits, and physically, I'm in better shape than 99% of men my age. My dilemma is whether to stay in a loveless marriage or to physically split. The incentive to stay is both financial and family. We have 2 young granddaughters whom I adore, and I know she would try to divide me away from them out of spite if I leave her. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not sure if you're past the "we need marriage counseling as soon as possible," but if you're willing to hear her tyrannical rant when you bring it up, then push for it. It may be a difficult process. However, it will either help improve your marriage or give you a clear path forward to divorce. Tell her exactly that. We both attend and both put in the effort to correct our marriage, or we will be divorced this time next year. If her reaction is to fight it to the last, then you have your answer. Comment 2. Consider counseling for yourself. As you own real estate free and clear, you may be open to owning an alternative dwelling unit for yourself. A he shed. No wife allowed in this space. Allow your imagination to flow and have it designed any way that would delight you. Everyone deserves a fortress of solitude, a place for a momentary escape. I have met several men who have a solitary place to escape. What are your thoughts on it? Now for the update. I'm not sure where we stand after she spent the weekend alone and asked for space. I need to figure out what to do next. The morning after my last post, I woke up feeling everything more than ever. I guess I was in a bit of a daze. At first, I was just staring at the ceiling. I didn't even feel like getting up, but eventually, I dragged myself out of bed and decided to take a walk. I thought maybe some fresh air would help clear my mind. It didn't really work, to be honest. It was one of those days where everything felt heavy. While I was walking around the neighborhood, I bumped into a neighbor. You know how it is, those awkward small talk moments. She casually mentioned seeing my wife at the local grocery store with another man. My heart sank a bit, but I brushed it off, thinking it's just my neighbor being friendly or nosy, whatever. I didn't think much of it. So I went home and found my wife in the kitchen, preparing dinner. We said our hellos, but it was pretty much silent after that. We sat down for dinner, and the conversation was just strained, very uncomfortable. Trying to break the ice, my wife brought up our finances. She was stressing about expenses for our granddaughter's upcoming birthdays. I mean, I get it. They like to go all out for birthdays. I love spoiling them, but you also have to be smart about it, right? So I suggested scaling back on some of the unnecessary purchases. And bam, we started arguing about our spending habits. She accused me of not caring about family traditions. The air was just thick with tension after that. We ate in silence. The next day, my daughter called, asking about the birthday party plans. I learned that my wife had been planning some pretty extravagant gifts without even discussing it with me. Like, come on. So I confronted her about the lack of communication regarding our budget. She just brushed me off, saying I'm out of touch with family needs. The argument escalated from there. She started bringing up old grievances from our marriage, things that have nothing to do with this. That's when I decided I needed some space. I took a weekend trip to visit my sister. I needed a break from all of this. While I was there, I got a text from my wife saying we need to talk. I didn't want to deal with that, so I just responded with a nonchalant okay. I wasn't in the mood for a conversation. When I returned home, I found my wife in a worse mood than before. She had spent the entire weekend alone and was just in a bad place. That's when she said she's feeling overwhelmed and suggested we take a break from each other. That was a couple of weeks ago. Since then, I've been trying to keep myself busy. I found her old college yearbook while cleaning the attic, and it sparked a lot of memories. I was looking at it, and then I overheard my granddaughters talking about their grandma being upset about something. I asked them about it, but they brushed me off, saying it's adult stuff. I went home to find my wife packing some bags. She told me she's going to stay with her sister for a while. I asked if we could talk, but she insisted she needs space. That was it. Since then, I've been trying to focus on my hobbies just to keep my mind off things. A few days ago, I got a call from my daughter asking if I'm okay. She expressed concern over the tension at home, and I assured her everything is fine, but I'm feeling more and more isolated. On a particularly quiet evening, I checked the mail and found a letter from my wife. She stated she's considering a divorce, citing irreconcilable differences and a lack of intimacy. I was shocked. I tried to call her, but there was no answer. The next day, I found out through a family group chat that she attended the granddaughter's birthday party without me. My daughter shared pictures, including one of my wife smiling with that man from the grocery store. That was it for me. I realized I can't control her actions, so now I'm trying to focus on my own well-being and personal growth. It's hard, though. I feel more alone than ever, but I'm determined to move forward. Am I the idiot for feeling conflicted about my dad's affair and my stepmom's reaction? My dad, who is 63 years old, came round this afternoon and told me that my stepmom, who is 61 years old, was indefinitely staying with her sister because they had fallen out, and he is not sure what is happening with their relationship now. They have been together for about 13 years. For additional reference, my partner and I have a lot of experience in special educational needs and disabilities, and are certain my dad is autistic. He struggles with understanding others' feelings and respecting boundaries. He disclosed to me, a 25-year-old woman, that the pair of them have not been intimate in 7 years because after he had open heart surgery, she felt she couldn't touch him anymore due to him having had someone's hands inside his body, and claimed he was no longer the same person. My dad agreed to this, and they later got married. Recently, my dad had an old girlfriend reach out to him online, a girl who went to the same school as him but was a few years younger. She invited him down to where she lives for a few days, and he went. When I was initially told this was happening, I thought it very strange that he would travel 300 miles to visit a female friend from 45 years ago, and that my stepmom was okay with it. I am not sure in the same situation that I would be. He remains adamant that it wasn't planned, but they wound up sleeping together. He claimed she pretty much dragged him out of the car and into the shower and asked what he was supposed to have done. It doesn't seem like he is intending on stopping this relationship, as he feels rejuvenated and, to quote, like a man again. My stepmom is obviously not happy. My dad has asked for an open relationship where he can see the girlfriend 3 days a month, and the rest of the time remain with my stepmom. He called it a polyamorous relationship, which I don't think quite fits the situation here, and claimed he couldn't help it if he was a polyamorous person. He said that my stepmom doesn't want to share him, hence the falling out. On the one hand, this is far more information about my parents' lives than I ever thought I would receive, and that I ever needed. My stepmom has been in my life since I was 11 and is a lovely woman. My dad has asked for me to not think less of him, but I absolutely do. My mother cheated on him, and I can't believe he would do it to another person. I am not sure he views it as cheating, though, because of the fact he and my stepmom are not intimate. In some ways, however, I can see where he is coming from because his needs are not being met, but equally, he agreed to this. What the hell do I do here? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Ethical non-monogamy means this kind of situation is discussed and consented to before anyone engages with someone outside of the relationship. What your dad did is 100% cheating, and excusing the behavior by rationalizing he didn't have his needs met is minimizing his behavior and your stepmom's feelings. Neurodivergent or not, he has to live with his consequences. You don't get to 63 years of age without understanding the behavior-consequence dynamic. You don't have 2 marriages without understanding basic interpersonal relationships. I understand you're viewing this in a way that allows him his concrete thinking, but he's already experienced cheating in his first marriage, and he knows from that experience that cheating isn't acceptable in a marriage. Comment 2. I usually love to see cheaters get what they deserve, and he didn't handle it the right way, that's for sure, but I think this shows the kind of man he is a little harsh in this case, because after he had open heart surgery, she felt she couldn't touch him anymore due to him having had someone's hands inside his body, and claimed he was no longer the same person. What is that? If that's true, she sounds nuttier than squirrel poo. Not the same person because a surgeon operated on him? She's allowed to have her own boundaries, but damn if that isn't a messed up reason to decline to be intimate. Both are in the wrong in their own way and should never have gotten married, I think. Now, for the update. A couple of days after my last update, my dad called me to say he was coming over for dinner. Yeah, as if things weren't already complicated enough, he decided to drop that on me. I spent the entire day cleaning the house like crazy, trying to make it look presentable while also preparing for what I knew would be a very tense conversation. I didn't even know what to expect, but I knew it was going to be awkward as hell. Then, out of nowhere, my stepmom showed up at the house. I was seriously surprised. She'd been pretty quiet since the whole fallout with my dad, so seeing her was definitely unexpected. She arrived with a bottle of wine in hand and this nervous smile on her face, like she was trying to put on a brave front or something. We started preparing dinner together, which felt a bit surreal considering everything that had happened. I mean, I thought we were all on the verge of some major family drama, and here we were chopping veggies and stirring pots. She asked me how I was coping with everything, and I could tell she was genuinely concerned. When I mentioned my dad's unusual request for an open relationship, though, she went quiet, like dead silent. Dinner was a completely different story. My dad arrived late, claiming he got caught in traffic. Yeah, right, as if I believed that. The atmosphere was so heavy you could cut it with a knife, and any small talk we tried to make felt super forced. It was awkward to the max. Finally, my stepmom broke the silence and asked about the friend my dad was seeing. He shrugged it off, saying it was just a casual arrangement. I watched as my stepmom's expression changed from confusion to anger right before my eyes. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion. She stood up abruptly, knocking over her wine glass, which shattered all over the floor. Talk about dramatic. My dad tried to calm her down, but she yelled that he was being selfish. I was sitting there awkwardly, trying to mediate the whole situation, suggesting that we all just take a break. But my stepmom wasn't having any of it. She stormed out of the house, leaving both me and my dad in shock. I followed her outside, where she was sitting in her car, looking completely lost. She told me she needed to think and then drove away. I went back inside and confronted my dad about what had just happened. He seemed unfazed, like this was just a normal Tuesday for him, and said he was just trying to explore his options. A few days later, I got a message from my stepmom asking to meet. We met up at a diner, and she revealed that she'd been talking to a friend about their situation. I wasn't sure how I felt about that, but I guess it was good she had someone to talk to. She mentioned that she was considering separation, which totally surprised me. She also shared that she had feelings for someone she met years ago. That's when I kinda lost it. I mean, what the hell? After everything my dad put her through, now she's having feelings for someone else? She suggested that they might both be better off if they moved on. Then she left, saying she needed time to figure things out. I was just left sitting there, digesting all this new info. Later that week, my dad called me, claiming he wanted to talk about our family dynamics. He mentioned he had been seeing the woman more frequently and felt it was going well. I had to bite my tongue to stop myself from screaming. I asked him about my stepmom, and he said they were both just trying to find happiness. I mean, seriously? The next day, I got a call from my dad's old friend who mentioned seeing my dad and the woman together at a local restaurant. At that point, I wasn't even surprised. I drove over there, feeling a mix of anger and disbelief, and as I approached the restaurant, I spotted my dad and the woman sitting together at a table, laughing like they were in some rom-com or something. Later that evening, I got a message from my stepmom saying she was moving out. She confirmed she would be taking a trip to visit her friend for a while. I asked her if she was sure about all this, and she just said she needed a break. She started packing her stuff while my dad remained completely oblivious to the tension in the room. It was infuriating. She left for her trip, and my dad just went about his routine as if nothing had changed. To answer a few questions, my stepmom has a good support system and close friends. She mentioned needing space to think things through. My dad is unaware of my stepmom's feelings for someone else, and I haven't told him. My stepmom's friend is someone she has known for years but never dated. My dad's old friend reached out to me because they were concerned about my dad's behavior. I am feeling overwhelmed and unsure about what to do next. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.